explain to us how the $1,000 IXP can be built? Is it dollars or euros?
It's dollars actually.
Okay, thank you.
Which is also almost the same as euros. And while I already uploaded this deck, and then I found out that the actual value of the $1,000 bill that's on the front of my presentation is actually worth $2,500 these days. It's my bad. I'm really going to talk about $1,000 internet exchanges. So before we start, this is a work in progress. This is not finished, and I'm fully expecting to be completely shot down by about half of the people in this audience. That's a design goal for this presentation. There's a big difference between setting up a new exchange from the ground up and parachuting in a satellite of an existing exchange. The latter I'm not going to cover because there's all sorts of reasons for all sorts of designs and decisions that those people make. My goal is to do this presentation and look to come to something like a full deck and a blueprint after the summer, and I want your help. So this morning at the BGP tutorial, there was this slide, and it had an internet exchange has to have a big Ethernet switch because internet exchanges are complicated beasts that require huge equipment. Fine. So here's how internet exchanges started. I don't know if you recognize one. The one on the right is the original Lynx switch. It's got 8 10 meg ports as far as I can recall, but Mike will probably tell you all about it. And the one on the left is one of the original boxes used by AMSIX. And this is what it looks like today. At least I've just picked some samples of some equipment vendors. So if you're a new IXP setting up in some part of the world, what do you do? And I mean, if you talk to the established IXPs, I mean, some of them are really friendly. They'll give you a pile of old boxes they no longer use because they've grown out of them. They'll even offer to run them for you if you want. The ITU has recently developed an interest in internet exchanges, and they'll come over and in a nice suit and tell you that setting up an internet exchange will cost you at least $2 million. And your local networking geek really just wants a big box with lots of shiny lights. And he can't afford one himself. So that's probably not what you want to do. What you really want to do if you're a new IXP is do some market research and build a community. And I know that sounds incredibly dull. So I've done you all a service. I've done the first bit for you, so you just have to build communities from now on. Awesome. So market research. I went and collected some data from Euroax covering 204 IXPs from all around the world. It's data from December of last year. It usually takes a while for traffic data to sort of be collected, and December was a trade-off between how complete the data is for all of the exchanges versus how recent. Some of the exchanges are dead, struggling, dying, defunct, well, as happens. So the question really is on the market research, so how much traffic should you anticipate on a new internet exchange? What should you be designing for? And that's actually a little bit of a shocker. So and yes, it's unreadable, but that's by design. Because there's absolutely no way I can fit 200 tags on a single PowerPoint slide. This is the breakdown of all peak traffic of all IXPs around the world. And yes, over on the far end right side is DKIX, of course, but somehow PowerPoint didn't want to print that one out. So look at this. Okay, this is actually, and just to be very clear, this is a logarithmic scale, because otherwise it would just end up all weird and awkward and you couldn't make any sense out of it. So this is 20 gigs. And 20 gigs in peak traffic is, well, what you could run on, well, let's say, commodity hardware. And if you look at all of the exchanges around the world, actually 66% of all exchanges around the world have less than 20 gigs in peak traffic. And that includes all of the massive European exchanges. If you actually exclude Europe from this data, You go back to the 20 gig line. 78% of all internet exchanges around the world have less than 20 gig in peak traffic. So the quick and easy conclusion of the market research is if you manage to get 20 gigs of peak traffic on a new IXP, it's time to go to the pub, and when you're sober again, you need to start thinking about how you expand this thing. Until then, first, you need to grow in order to scale, and then you need to scale in order to grow, and not the other way around. And actually, and if you want to help out new IXPs, you should sponsor meeting rooms and not big gear. You should facilitate local community building, and you should give them your international contacts. So looking at, okay, so what are the requirements I should build and design an IXP against, the startup one? So here we go. So 20 gigs of peak capacity, which is usually averages out to about 8 gigs of average traffic, 20, 30 ports. Since you're in developing areas, you're going to get some demand for, thank you. 10 megs, 100 megs, 1 gig, maybe multiple 1 gigs. You want to have a portal website, you want to quarantine VLAN, you want to route server on ArtWatch, the usual. So what do you need for that? Well, it's this. This is actually the contents of my basement. It's a 24-port office switch. It's a super micro server low end, and there's some cabling and SFPs. So the switch is $279.95 on Amazon right now. The server you can get for $545.96 over at Newegg, and then you have some cabling, which gives you about $25 to buy 6 specs and get your first community meeting done. So that's the start of the presentation. That's what this really is about. Is don't waste your time if you want to set up an internet exchange with your friends in some part of the world. Don't waste your time agonizing over designs and buying big massive boxes, because there's no point in just wasting money, and actually you're making the discussion a lot more complicated because there's lots of money involved, and you should really be spending that time on successfully building that community and actually getting traffic going. And once you have the traffic, then you start worrying about what you should do and how you should design that, and that's really it. And I have 2 minutes left.
Thank you, Remco. Are there comments, questions? We have
tomatoes,
few minutes left.
Rocks, soft ones, please.
I see Nigel running to the mic. I see Jim running to the mic.
Nigel Titley, one of the founders of Links. Your link slide was slightly inaccurate.
Oh.
That was the second link switch.
Oh, my bad, sorry.
The first one was a 5-port hub. Does anyone remember those?
Thank you.
It's Mike, Jim, and Illich.
Hi, it's Mike Hughes, Limelight Networks. Used to work at Links. I was about to say pretty much the same thing as Nigel, but he beat me to it. Yeah, it was the first Links switch. There was a hub before it. Philip Smith may even still have it. Anyway, the other thing to say was, if you want to add 10 gig ports to that exchange, you do need to buy a second switch.
Yes.
Because of the way that the queuing strategies work in the cheap switches. But that's assuming that somebody comes along and says they want a 10 gig port. If it's a small community exchange, you may not need it.
Exactly.
But, put my big CDN hat on for a minute, I can't join an exchange that's probably only got one gig ports.
Then you should probably reconsider your strategy where you deploy and how you deploy, but that's a different story.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
Jim Reed speaking for myself. Remco, this is a great idea, and I think you're on the right lines as far as the technical aspects of setting up an internet exchange or a small scale or an introductory internet exchange. But I think the problems there are not about pricing or hardware. I think the problems are the layer 9 and above, and it's issues around regulatory regimes, the way in which incumbent telcos will invent restrictive practices, problems with cross-connects. You know that story far better than I do, and I think that's the area where we really need to focus on.
That's completely. I completely agree. At the same time, I'm Dutch, which means I'm frugal. Some would say cheap, which means I also. I mean, I don't just worry about spending my own money. I also worry about people spending theirs, and that's where this came from. I've seen some evidence, and I actually heard a couple of anecdotes today while talking to people about newly set up exchanges in remote parts of the world, where the first thing that was done was buy 4 fully loaded Cisco 6513 chassis with ports that nobody could even connect to or support because that technology wasn't available in the country. So there we go. Ilyich.
My name is Ilyich van Bijnem. I'm not speaking on behalf of the people who gave me this t-shirt, just to be clear. So I was wondering, lots of internet exchanges are actually just one-page marketing materials for small data centers in remote cities, right? So you shouldn't take them seriously. So I think probably if you look at anything that is really an internet exchange in the real world, then it's probably they do use more than your 20 gigs. So I think your numbers are probably a bit...
You'd be very surprised/disappointed at what's actually in those 200 exchanges.
So give me an example of a 20 gigabit internet exchange.
Namex in Rome is actually right at the 20 gig mark.
Okay, so then about...
Disappointing, right?
Right. So then about that $300 switch from Amazon. So that is interesting. I assume those are gigabit ports?
Yep.
So can you bundle them? Can you say I want to bundle 2?
Yep.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah,
You should
I know.
Send me the type of that switch. I want
It's so the switch. I mean, I'm not working for any of the vendors. This is a shared design between the well-renowned switch makers Freecom, HP, and H3C. This is a shared design. They all sell it under their own label. It's the HP calls it the V191024G. Which is it's a mouthful, but it's a cheap ass switch I decided to buy because I needed something for my basement. And then when I did this research, I figured, oh, hang on, I actually have this. That's my 10 minutes. Well, and truly gone.
Thank you very much. No, the mics are now closed. Sorry.
Oh,
Or is that really, really quick question?
is it a good question?
Okay.
If you use Marvel-based CPUs, you can bring down your computer to about $200 with 8 gigabit ports, or $100 for 3 gigabit ports. So you can really lower it.
You probably, I mean, if you use second-hand hardware, you can probably get it down to 500 or even 300. And if you buy a used switch, I mean, you can. This is all new equipment. This actually has, I mean, the switch has a lifetime warranty. If it breaks, you just ship back the remains and you get a new one.
Okay. Remco, thank you.
Sure.
So before we go for a break, I would like to mention 2 things. This is now